In this video, I'm going to be showing you guys the differences between the LUMIX S1 Mark II and the S1 Mark IIe and seeing which one might be the best camera for you. Now, if you are interested, I reviewed both these cameras against a bunch of other cameras, especially the S1 Mark II versus the GH7, the S5IIX, and the S1R Mark II already on my channel, and I'll leave some links to those videos down in the description if you're seeing something a little bit more specific on a very specific camera model. Let's dive right into these two cameras, the LUMIX S1 Mark II and the LUMIX S1 Mark IIe. And thanks for Artlist for sponsoring this video, but more on them later. The first thing we do need to touch point on is going to be the price point of both these cameras. The LUMIX S1 Mark II is going to be coming in around $3,200 brand new. Meanwhile, the LUMIX S1 Mark IIe is going to be coming in around $2,500. So basically a $700 difference, and what are you going to be getting with that? The physical differences between both these cameras is literally none. Both these cameras are the exact same build design. Both these cameras have a fully articulating screen, individual port covers for your HDMI, USB-C, headphone, and mic jack. You have a dedicated photo, video, and slow and quick switch. You also have a lock button to change your dials and make sure when you lock it, you're not able to change them. You have a front record button, your front and rear tally lights, an SD card, a CF Express Type B card, a lock switch on the back as well, and everything else is basically the exact same between both these cameras in terms of the physical differences between them. There isn't any. The only major difference between both these models is that the LUMIX S1 Mark II is going to be having a 24.1 megapixel sensor. Meanwhile, the S1 Mark IIe is going to be having a 24.2 megapixel sensor, which is the exact same as the S5IIX. The biggest differences of these two cameras is going to be the video specs between both these models. Both these cameras can shoot 6K up to 24 or 30 frames a second, but on the S1 Mark IIe, you are going to be able to shoot 4K or 6K in 2 4:1 aspect ratio up to 60 frames a second, getting the full width of the full frame sensor, but not the full height of the full frame sensor. What this basically means is if you are on a 16:9 timeline, you are actually getting a 1.3x crop, and if you are on a 2:1 aspect ratio timeline, it's going to be a 1.1x crop. You can shoot in 4K 60 or 48 frames a second, but there will be an APS-C crop up to 1.5x crop on the image. Meanwhile, on the S1 Mark II, again, 6K, 24, 30 frames a second, but the bigger features is you're able to shoot 5.1K downsampled from 6K, getting up to 60 frames a second in open gate. So open gate 60 frames a second. You are also able to shoot 4K 120 frames a second with about a 1.1x crop onto the image, or you can shoot in a Cine 4K in a 17:9 aspect ratio up to 96 frames a second with zero crop whatsoever. You can also shoot 1080, 240 frames a second on this camera, and a bunch of other different modes like that. Both these cameras can shoot in ProRes RAW 5.8K with a pixel by pixel crop, and then you can also shoot in 4K 60 frames in ProRes RAW, again with a pixel by pixel crop on both these cameras. And lastly, it also should just be worth mentioning on the S1 Mark II, there is no crop in 4K 60 or 48 frames a second, just like how there is no crop in Cine 4K up to 96 frames a second. The only crop modes is about, again, that 1.1x crop at 4K 120 frames a second. Technically, it's still full frame, but it just has a little bit tiny crop on the image when shooting 4K 120 frames a second. Granted, you are still getting sound and autofocus when you are using 120 frames a second, but the only thing that you will be missing out is going to be subject to tracking on 120 frames a second or higher. Granted, if you shoot at 96 frames a second, you get subject tracking focus back. So there's that. I personally would recommend, if you want to shoot at a fast frame rate, just use 96 frames a second and you get subject tracking, and it will just be much better at the end of the day. Now, both these cameras can use the LUMIX Flow app, which allows you to monitor your camera via your phone. You can also create storyboards and scenes, marking each scene when you're recording it as okay, keep, or bad. It automatically organizes all your footage into XML files, so when you upload it to either Final Cut Pro, DaVinci Resolve, or Premiere Pro, it allows you to have everything be automatically organized. But in terms of the storyboard, that is where today's sponsor comes in, which is Artlist. Artlist is one of the industry leaders when it comes to tools for creators, from music, stock footage, LUTs, templates, and more generative AI content. Artlist has carefully curated a collection of generative AI models and visual styles to fit the needs of any video creator, from Veo, Nano Banana, Sora, and many more. So using the generative model from Artlist like Nano Banana allows you to import your own footage, take photos, import it to Artlist, and then give a better overall enhanced storyboard when you're creating these storyboards using the LUMIX Flow app. So this, in part with the LUMIX Flow app, allows you to import much higher quality storyboards to give you a better overall visual representation of what you're trying to capture or shoot with your camera. So if you want to try out this feature or one of the other many powerful features that Artlist provides, there will be a link in the description. You'll get 2 free months off when you sign up for an annual plan. Thanks again for Artlist for sponsoring this video. For the rest of this video, most of these cameras are actually going to be very similar and identical in a lot of ways. Things like video assist tools from Proxy Recordings both have real-time LUT, the LUMIX Lab app, the LUMIX Flow app. The rest of the LUMIX magic sauce in terms of electronic stabilization, shutter angle, multiple frame markers, kind of list goes on and on. In terms of audio, you can use an XLR2 and get 32-bit flow audio on both these cameras. The color science in terms of vlog looks very similar. I would say the S1 Mark II produces a slightly nicer image, but that's ever so slightly because it is using a partially stacked sensor. You can also get via a paid upgrade for $200 ARRI Log C3 on both these cameras. The image quality overall looks very similar. In terms of dynamic range, both the S1 Mark II and the S1 Mark IIe can produce up to 14 stops of dynamic range. However, the S1 Mark II does have something called dynamic range boost mode, which you can activate in 24 or 30 frames a second, and that is going to be allowing you to get up to 15 stops of dynamic range. It's mostly ideal for interview setups when your camera is on sticks. The last differences really between both these cameras is going to come to your dual native ISOs. On the S1 Mark IIe in Vlog, you're at 640 and 4000, similar to the S5 IIX, but on the S1 Mark II, it's going to be 640 and 5000. Now this does change if you go to ARRI Log C3. That's why I created you guys this dual native ISO cheat sheet that shows you all the different dual native ISOs on various LUMIX cameras, and there's going to be a free download link down in the description if you're interested in picking that up. The last thing I want to touch point on before we move on to which camera I personally recommend is going to be going into reliability / overheating. Now, a lot of people might assume the LUMIX S1 Mark IIe doesn't have any overheating issues due to the fact that it's using the exact same sensor as the S5 IIX. However, unfortunately, that's not the case. I will say examples and scenarios how to avoid overheating for the majority of the time, and personally speaking, these are the 2 cameras I do use professionally speaking for my actual job running a video production business. But here's to the example and scenarios where both these cameras did overheat. Now, for the settings of both these cameras, they're going to be the exact same, using Auto 1 for the fan speed, where it is actively cooling instead of proactively cooling like Auto 2, and using high thermal management in terms of the performance. On the S1 Mark IIe, when I was outside in direct sunlight, shooting in 6K up 24 frames a second, it got around to the 22 to 25 minute mark before the camera had to shut down and cool down. On the S1 Mark II though, it did the exact same test and it's going to be shut down around 12 minutes. Granted, I was in 75 degrees and in direct sunlight. The interesting thing to me is when I did this in a controlled environment in a studio and heated it up to 90 degrees Fahrenheit or 33 Celsius, so much hotter than I was outside, it produced interesting results. When again, using Auto 1, using the high thermal management, using an SD card instead of a CF Express Type B card, because CF Express Type B cards do generate more heat, I was actually pretty shocked by both these tests. I was recording 32-bit flow audio, had an HDMI, had the battery inside it, and both these cameras had no overheating issues whatsoever. Not even the warning popped up. The camera ended up dying around after an hour and 30 minutes of recording, and the camera completely shut down. It's just something worth noting when you are looking at both these cameras is if you're a wedding filmmaker, maybe the S5 IIX currently makes a little bit more sense. So if you're not really concerned with overheating, depending on how you use a camera or need to use a camera, which one of these cameras should you buy? There's a couple different people for different options. If you're upgrading from the S5 IIX, I personally wouldn't recommend getting the S1 Mark IIe because it's not as substantial of an upgrade from the S5 IIX to the S1 Mark IIe. In that case scenario, I would just get the S1 Mark II because you're getting all of the video settings that you probably are hoping from the S5 IIX. Now, if you're switching to Lumix from the S1 Mark IIe or the S1 Mark II, well, that becomes a little bit more questionable. If you're thinking about getting an FX3 or the Canon C50, well, that's where the Lumix S1 Mark II might make a little bit more sense. However, this is your first video camera, maybe the S1 Mark IIe or the S5 IIX could be a better choice for you because it's going to give you basically everything that you're going to need to actually get a video business or get shooting on a camera going. You don't necessarily need all of these fancy features that the Lumix S1 Mark II has unless you're doing this professionally speaking. At the end of the day, I would write down a list of features of non-negotiable features for you. What settings, what video settings, how you want the camera designed to feel and look like. I would write that down and figure out what is your non-negotiables and then look at the various different Lumix cameras they have to offer. I would love to hear your guys' thoughts on the Lumix S1 II versus the S1 IIe and which one of these cameras might be best for you and why. Leave those comments down below. If you guys are interested in seeing the Lumix S1 Mark IIe versus the S5 IIX, well, check out that video right there. YouTube recommends you might like this video right here. Until the next one, guys, peace.